So first, thank you everybody for joining the Influence Her, the virtual experience event. Today we are joined with Miss Candace Armour. Candace is a dynamic entrepreneur, blogger, woman of God who is truly passionate about pouring into other women. Some of her platforms with Epic Fab Girl, where she helps faith-focused, career-minded women discover purpose and go after their dreams fearlessly. That's just a brief introduction, but I'll hand it over to Candace to just tell us a little bit more about herself.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Taisha. I'm super excited about this opportunity. Just to tell you a little bit more about myself, is that I'm from Chicago, and I pretty much have always been kind of that. I don't want to call myself the golden child, but the child that never got in trouble. And I was always kind of book smart. And throughout college and everything, that was kind of my experience. But I always had a passion for business. And that was ignited when I was when I was a really young girl. But when I went away to college, I actually studied engineering, which had absolutely nothing to do with my kind of passion in business. And so I actually ended up starting a business while in undergrad on accident. It was a hair extensions company, and that is an interesting story in and of itself, but I started that. And then I started pursuing my master's in business. So by the time I was pretty much 23, I had graduated with my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. And then I also had received my MBA from Washington University in St. Louis. And so that was kind of where my passion for business reignited. And I basically kind of shifted gears from engineering to business there, and then started working in corporate America for about 3 years doing digital marketing consulting. And that in and of itself was just an interesting journey. But I started working in the consulting workspace and quickly learned that, I had a skill set that people really valued and a work ethic that people valued. And if I took that same work ethic and applied it to kind of what I do on my own, that I would be able to be successful doing it. And so that was when I made the decision to pretty much walk away from my full-time job and pursue entrepreneurship full-time. And I had already launched my blog, Epic Fab Girl, and then I was able to kind of transform that into a business that hosted live events. We had a sold out conference for the first time, which was Go Getter Conference. And then I also have that gave me the space and the time to be able to launch my consulting company, Candace Consulting, where I basically help visionaries take their ideas and turn them into profitable businesses. And I also help kind of established businesses take their businesses online. So that has been my journey. And I mean, I guess that's the Cliff Notes version of who I am.
Awesome. Okay, so you dropped so many good nuggets there. So one of the first topics I want to just jump right into is merging business and purpose. A lot of people, right now, everybody is launching a business, a brand, a product, whatever it is. But sometimes it's not really aligned with either the purpose they're supposed to be doing, and they're wondering why they're failing. Why can't I seem to get the real momentum behind what it is that I'm doing? So just in your work and the people that you work with, how do you do that? How do you truly merge purpose with business? Because sometimes for some people it's a lot easier to identify, oh, I know this is my purpose, I know I'm supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z. For others, the struggle is a little different, and they have a real struggle with trying to identify that. So if you can speak to, from your experience or for your expertise, I would say, how do you merge those two?
Yeah, so I go against the grain all the time, right? So I like to challenge thought processes and things that we've kind of learned over time, right? So purpose is one of them, where and kind of, especially when you talk about your career and what you're supposed to do for a living, a lot of times, if you think back to when you were younger, people would ask you, what do you want to be? What do you want to be when you grow up? And they ask that as if you could only be one thing. And I think we've learned to kind of believe that whatever it is that I'm going to do is going to be that one thing. But I think the interesting thing is that purpose is multifaceted. And purpose has many different layers. And so while you may have a purpose to teach women and help them understand their identity, you may also have a purpose to also, be a real estate developer or a real estate investor. So I think that God placed us on this earth to solve problems, and it may be mostly multifaceted. And I think one of the best ways to figure out how to merge purpose and business is to look at the gifts and talents that you have been given. So if you're good at something, you're not good at that thing just for no reason. It has a purpose. It's to serve others. And then the second piece of that is to look at not only what you're good at, but what you're passionate about. And I think a lot of people get in trouble because they try to pursue things that they're passionate about that isn't necessarily profitable. And that's where you get into trouble when you're like starting a business and you don't know how to make money from it because it's all passion and it doesn't make profit. And so basically, I think that when it comes to merging your purpose and your business, your purpose, you have to have a good understanding of who you are, what your talents are, what value you bring to the world. And sometimes it's hard to say what value we bring to the world because we're ourselves. But maybe it's easier for someone else outside of you to say, oh, you know what? You are really good at styling people. You are really good at, telling people how they should dress. Whatever it is that you may have a talent in, other people may be able to point that out a little bit easier for you than you, but you have to figure out, how does this talent or this passion intertwine with the people that I want to serve? And then that's how you're able to intertwine that into a profitable business model, because you're able to add value by way of the gifts and talents that you have and figuring out a way to serve others in that. And that's where you're able to make profit and become an actual, business.
Okay. When you also, so a few things there. So when you say, you have something that you are passionate about and you're struggling to figure out how to make a profit out of it, would you say that maybe, can you be passionate about something that may not be able to bring you a profit?
I think that there is a way to make profit off of anything. Like, you give me anything and I'm gonna sell it. You give me anything and I'm gonna tell you how to make it into a business. So I do believe that there are ways to figure out a creative way to make your passion become a business. I think the issue is that if your passion does not solve a problem, then, like, let's say you're passionate about, like, I'm thinking of like the most random things. If you're passionate about like clipping toenails, right? Like, you're like, I just want to clip toenails for the rest of my life. Like, this is what I want to do. If that's what you're passionate about, it's like, people that you have to figure out if that's something that adds value to people. Are people going to come to you just to get their toenails clipped from you, or do they want this full-on service? Like, you may be able to offer something to the world that you might not even be thinking about that may intertwine with your passion. So, you can offer them pedicures and you can offer a different experience. So I think that whenever you have, like, you can literally make anything into a business and make it profitable. But I think the problem is that when people start launching businesses by way of seeing what other people are doing and not actually walking in their purpose, that's why they look up and they're like, how come I'm not making any money? You saw that somebody else was selling t-shirts, so you like, I'm gonna sell t-shirts. But that's not your lane. If that's not your lane, then you're not gonna make money doing it because you're not walking in your purpose. You need to be pursuing things that are going to add value and things that are going to fill a gap in the marketplace. And that's where you're able to actually make profit. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, for a lot of business people, they are so focused on pushing a profit, or, you know what I mean? And people know when they're being sold to, when when someone's been really salesy, and people tap into more of the person versus the actual product or service or things like that. So you have to be able to have that connection with people, and they have to be able to see that value. But what are some setbacks? You kind of mentioned one actually of people focusing on somebody else, and you get caught up in like, okay, well, we're kind of in the same industry. I kind of do that same thing. I know I can do that. And you're kind of taking notes from them. And you're kind of building your business model off of someone else, when that's the most terrible way to do it, because their plan is for them and you have to figure out your plan. But a lot of people do get caught up with that, or so if you can speak to that, as well as those who may only try to seek a profit, and what's the longevity in that when you're in your business, when you're not being intentional about who your audience is, what value you bring to others.
Yeah. So, okay, if I forget the second question, just to remind me.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
first part
Yeah.
of that, I think that there's this space where, dang, I forgot the first question. What was the first question?
The first question was do like feel like any Jeopardy music. Oh no, the first question was basically how we are focused on other outsources as opposed to focusing on ourselves and building our own business model for ourselves, instead of looking right or left at other people who may share our same industry.
Absolutely. So I think comparison in and of itself is just horrible in life in general. And I think it's horrible with your business, right? Because when you're comparing yourself and your journey to others, you're going to be trying to move at a pace that they're moving at. And a lot of times you'll see stuff where people like, there's like a popular quote that says like, don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 22, right?
Yeah.
Like you're comparing your journey to somebody who's been working a lot harder and longer than you for a much longer period of time. And so I think that when you find yourself in a place where you're always looking, like it's one thing to be inspired by what other people are doing, but it's very different to say, this is what this person is doing, I want to do that same thing, and I'm going to take their content, I'm going to take their ideas for their content. And I think a lot of people do that on accident sometimes, and I think there's also people who do it knowingly that they're doing it, because like because there's so much free stuff out here, sometimes you forget that, if someone writes a blog about like the 10 ways to discover, how to discover the best wines in the world, right? Like that's kind of generic, but they may go into that blog and do that blog about something super specific about themselves, and it's unique to their brand. And if you go in and take those ideas or take that, it's kind of like, or you trying to say that you're building on that, it becomes like you're more of a copycat and not necessarily being inspired by. And you forget that it took that person time and a thought process for them to, figure out that information that they're sharing with the world. And I don't think it's fair for people to go and say, if you did go read that blog or whatever, and then you start on your platform and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to blog about this thing about wine and discovering wine or whatever. And you're teaching it like you are the one who discovered it to begin with. And I think you run into the problem of what happens if that person falls off the face of the earth. Now you don't have any content to actually develop because it was never yours to begin with. And then you also fall into the issue of just not really flexing your creative muscle. So you're kind of walking in someone else's lane and driving in someone else's lane that you don't necessarily belong in. And it's sad because I think a lot of people do get caught up looking at what other people are doing and they're like, oh, I want to do it just like that. And it's nice to be inspired, but it's best for you to use your talents and abilities to figure out what you're going to do to help the people that you're going to help. And another big thing is, and the reason I'm kind of dwelling on this for a long time is because it's one of those things where I think a lot of people do it on accident. Like they'll go and they'll take a course on how to email and market emails or to their customers or whatever. And they're like, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to create a course that teaches people how to market emails and stuff. And it's like, you didn't learn that on your own. Like you learned that by way of taking someone else's class. So maybe that's not your craft. Maybe your craft is teaching people what you actually know how to do, and which may be starting the blog that you started from the ground up. Like, so figure out what it is that you're good at and not necessarily what you see other people doing. And that'll help you become profitable in that space. And your next question was?
The second question was just, can you pursue profit over purpose and still have the longevity if you're not connected to the value that you're bringing to other people? Because some people are in business just for the profit. I mean, they may enjoy what they're doing, but maybe because they're enjoying, the coin they're getting from it. And maybe there's no real, passion or purpose behind it other than, it's a moneymaker.
Well, so I think that when people pursue something, there's two sides to this, right? So if someone pursues something for profit alone and that's their only driver, when the going gets tough, they're going to want to quit because the money might not be there. If you look at any startups have to raise money because they don't have money. Like, they have to raise money. So you're over here grinding it out, working super hard towards something, and the money isn't there initially. So it's like, if you're being driven by profit as a startup, like, at the end of the day, like, you're not going to have profit immediately off the bat. So the going gets tough and you want to give up. The other piece of that is that I believe that there are certain business ventures and ideas that you may not necessarily be super passionate about, but they are money makers, and you can absolutely go after them to fund your passion projects. So in the same way that, like myself and a lot of other people do, when I was working a full-time corporate job, making, the six figures, all of that, like, I was using that income to fuel my other businesses. So, in business, they often talk about it as a cash cow, right? So a cash cow is basically a business that produces and is consistent with producing income. So that could be something super simple as, maybe you do sell t-shirts for babies and they sell extremely well, but you're not even passionate about that. But you know that it solves an issue in the marketplace. You're adding value. Maybe there's no baby t-shirts like this anywhere. So you're adding value to the marketplace, and you're, by way of that, able to make a ton of profit, and you might not be super passionate about it, and you can use that to fuel what it is that you're doing down the line. And that makes me think of, there was this one guy I listened to a ton of podcasts. I forgot which podcast it was, but it was this guy who was in like college, and he started selling, like, literally just via Facebook ads. He started selling these butterfly necklaces. They were like beach themed necklaces. And this is like a white male 19-year-old boy who would never in life wear a, turquoise seashell necklace, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this man had made, this boy who literally made like hundreds of thousands of dollars selling on Facebook a product that he wasn't passionate about. And what he did was, once he built that business up, he sold it. So there's a way to go after things for profit, but you have to either be passionate about that thing, which may, like in his case, he was passionate about marketing. So there's something in that space that you're passionate about. You might not be passionate about the product, but you may be passionate about, business and, learning new things in business and gaining success in that capacity.
Okay, that's good. So you left your corporate America job. That took faith. That's not easy, because people are pursuing, as you said, like, that's your cash cow, and you may be in it because it's going to fund what it is that you really are pursuing outside of that 9 to 5. So, like, how did you build your confidence enough to say, I'm leaving a secure income to do my own thing? Like, that's scary for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's so scary. And I think that's one of the things that I do not want to like brush over, is that not only leaving your full-time job is scary, but actually like having left and like that being your only source of income, that's also scary. But at the end of the day, I think that it's so, so worth it. How did I build up the confidence? For me, I'm big on faith, and I'm big on not making moves without doing it within the will of God. So for me, like, I just had a peace that surpassed all understanding, like literally about leaving. But I didn't get that piece until I left, which was really weird because I felt like God was kind of testing me in that journey of like, do you trust me to do, like, if I told you to do something, right? So my journey was, I prayed about it. I asked God, like, okay, I know I need to leave this job. I need to be out of this job, but when is the right timing? And I had prayed about it maybe like 2 years before I quit. And I remember specifically hearing like, okay, just having this sense that there would be a time that would come where I would be pretty much where it would feel like the right time to go financially, but it wasn't time to go yet. There was more that he wanted me to learn where I was. And so that was kind of a humbling moment because I'm like, man, I want to get out of here, but that there was more that I needed to learn in that space. So I stayed a little bit longer and then prayed some more. And I basically got in the beginning of in the beginning of 2017, I got August of 2017. So I made the decision to leave, and pretty much 2 weeks leading up to, I had talked myself out of quitting my job. Like, I was not about to do it. I was calling on my friends like, y'all, like, the money ain't there. Like, this is just not right, right? And I knew that because of the capacity, like the amount of work that I had, like my workload at my full-time job, it just wasn't feasible for me to stay on board and still be trying to build my business on the side. And so for me, I like, even though I knew God told me to like walk away from my job, and I know if someone's like, I don't know how to hear from God, but like, I feel like you have unctions, you hear things, you feel, you sense
Absolutely.
about things. So for me, it was like, I was just like, am I willing to bet on myself? Like, am I willing, like, this is the only time in my life, like, I don't have any kids, I'm not married. I like, if I take this risk, it's just me. Like, if I fail, it's not other people depending on me, right? It's just me. So for me, it was a decision that I felt comfortable making after realizing that I could put that same 8 hours of time that I was putting into, like, sometimes it was 8, 10, 12-hour days, putting that actually into my business. If I was able to invest that in myself, that I would be able to take my business so much further. And so I just made that decision to really bet on myself. And to be honest, I wasn't super confident in it. But what I did was, once I made that decision, I stood on it and I did not look back. And there were times where I would be like, did I make the right decision? And I would question, but I did not look back because I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing in the right timing. Now, that's like me and the sensible, like the upfront, like, emotional process of everything. But on the back end, I was saving up my money. I knew exactly how much money I wanted to have saved up in my bank account before I left my job. The day I left my job, like, I literally got that money deposited into my account. So it was great that I basically was able to have that income. I was already preparing myself to live on less than I was, living on before. I was exploring other opportunities for additional income that so different, adding additional streams of income to what I was doing, just to, have different options other than like my passion projects.
Yeah.
And so I think I grew confident by, knowing that this was my chance to just live out my dream, and that if it didn't work, like, that wasn't an option. Like, it just was gonna work. And that, and I'm a big fan of, like, do not leave your job prematurely. Like,
I was gonna say, I was like, I know you had some kind of exit strategy, because you don't be like, oh, today I got to walk out, and you don't have no plan and you looking crazy.
Baby, because when you get sick, you need to consider insurance. You need to consider, your car note, your mortgage. You need to consider all of these things, whatever your rent is. If you don't have a clear budget on how much money you need to survive at the bare minimum, what I basically did, I looked at how much money I was spending before I quit my job. And then I looked at the areas that I could cut back on. Like, could I live, instead of eating out, 10 times a month or whatever, can I only eat out twice a month? Like, what could I shift to make it more reasonable for me to actually leave my job? And so I learned to live on less. I stopped getting my hair done as often. My nails aren't done. Y'all can't see them, but my nails aren't done. Like, I stopped doing certain things so that I can, basically be okay living on less so that in the future, when I'm a millionaire and I'm a billionaire, people can be like, wow, that was her struggle story. But no, like I had to struggle in and make sacrifices before I left my job. So I had to be sane in terms of the strategy, but then also know that when I left my job, I had something to do. A lot of people want to just quit their job, but what are you going to do for the 8 hours when you quit your job? Like you're going to have a whole bunch of free time. Like, what are you going to do?
Right. So before you made that decision to leave your job, where was your business? I know you said you had an exit strategy and things like that, but did you kind of already have things lined up in the pipeline where it's like, okay, where you felt a little bit more confident and been like, okay, yeah, now's a good time. I mean, at least I have this lined up. You mentioned, you had some other, projects and things that can bring in some more income. So were you 100% confident in where your business was at that time, or this was kind of like, you know what, I'm tired of giving them 8 hours of my day, I'm just going to give 8 hours over here, and then I'm going to find that new client, that next client?
Yeah, so for me, it was very much so like I was kind of like I didn't have a clear way of how I was going to make income, to be quite honest. But I walk by faith, not by sight, right? So for me, I knew that if I was obeying God, that He would meet me with the provision where He told me to go, right? So I I knew that I was hosting Go Getter Conference, so I knew that that was something that would help me to build my brand, establish my brand, and potentially create income as well. And then I also had other ideas for programs and online courses and things that I just didn't have the time to do when I was on my full-time job. So I had ways that I knew that I could generate income. I just had to take the time to build them out. And that's kind of this current season that I'm in, is kind of building the foundation of my business. And also just kind of generating revenue from different creative avenues. And like I said, like it was a faith walk for me because I didn't know exactly how I would make money. I just knew that I was smart enough to figure it out. Like I was smart enough to not only figure it out, but to know that like, even in my weakness, that God would meet me with His strength to help me, overcome whatever it was that I needed to overcome. And here I am, it's 8-9 months later, and I'm still okay. Like I quit my job. Like it's almost a year in
That's a
September.
blessing.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a blessing. So what advice or tips can you share for somebody that's kind of on that edge? They got one foot out the door, one foot in, and they're trying to figure out if they're going to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I would definitely say like do not leave your job if you don't have a way to make consistent income, or have like at least like 6 months of income saved up, or not even income, but like living expenses or whatever. And also just have a clear plan of what you're going to do, and be an amazing master of your time. And if you're one foot in and one foot out, that could mean that you do need to stay at your job longer. I think a lot of people think that entrepreneurship is glamorous. Like it's not glamorous. It's a tough journey, and at the end of the day, it like you have to take risks, but you have to take calculated risks. Like you don't want to just leave your job and you just launched your blog and you don't have anybody following you. Like you don't want to leave your job when you know you don't even have the full idea of what your business idea is, right? Like you don't even know what it, like you just have an idea of what you want to do, but you don't, and you also don't want to leave your job when maybe you have launched your business and you're not as profitable as you want to be. Like you don't want to leave your job if you don't know that you're going to be able to create income, or you don't have a clear path to income, right? And a clear timeline for that. And if you're not a good manager of your time, like don't even try to like entrepreneurship, full-time entrepreneurship takes incredible discipline. And if you're not there, like just do a little bit more, training of like making yourself be more disciplined with the time that you do have so that you can be prepared for when you do leave.
Absolutely. So when you did make that transition, I know you mentioned, you had some tough conversations with friends in the beginning, like, man, I don't know if this is what I should do. So it sounds like you have some great women surrounding you that you can, talk to, that can consult you, that you can kind of just have, a breakdown conversation with in one way or the other, and they give you sound advice that, that you value, obviously. Which brings me to the conversation of having a strong power circle around you, having a community, a tribe of women who hold you up, who encourage you, who support you. And that's important, not only in business, but in our personal lives. We all need to be surrounded around people who believe in us, who will support us, encourage us, pray for us, pray with us, and still pull us up by our collar if we're doing something wrong, because a lot of times, you have some groups where everybody just being a cheerleader. Nobody is telling you, no, you know what, you should have done that differently, or no, you know what I mean? No one's correcting anybody. Everybody is just kind of, cheering everybody along, which is just destructive in itself. But if you can speak to the importance of having a power circle and, like-minded people, like-minded women around you, and how that's beneficial and how it's been beneficial to you.
Absolutely. So having women around me has been super instrumental in my personal journey. And I think just having a strong group of people, regardless of gender, like has been extremely helpful. And as an entrepreneur, more so those people that are entrepreneurial minded are extremely, extremely helpful, just because entrepreneurship is something that not many people understand. And even though people hope for your best, it's hard for someone who has never done what you're trying to do get to give you
Right.
sound advice on entrepreneurship. And to be honest, like my parents, like I love them to life, and honestly they were very like when I quit my job, they're like, you're doing what? And why did you decide to quit? Like, I didn't even tell them I was quitting. I think I just quit. And then they found out
Right.
after. And at first they were just they were looking at me like I was nuts, but down the line, like, which ended up kind of feeling discouraging, but down the line, they ended up kind of, once they saw the fruit of what I was doing, they saw my conference, they saw that it was sold out. They saw, that people's lives were actually changing by way of, my obedience to God, that they kind of like let up and they're like, oh, this is like a real thing. And so sometimes it takes people to like time to see like you flourish for them to really support you the way that you want them to, even if it's your parents, your friends, whatever. So that's why it's extremely helpful to have like-minded entrepreneurs. And then on top of that, like-minded women that kind of help pull you up, help you in moments where you're like, I feel like I should have gone back to my job. And then they're like, no, like you obey God. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And they're helping you along that journey. And so for me, I have that's one of the reasons that I created Go Getter Conference, which it's a conference for faith-based, career-minded women. And basically, one of the biggest takeaways from the event was that people were like, wow, like I know, it's hard being an entrepreneur. It's hard being alone. It's hard not having people to call on and to hold on to and like be able to say, here's what's going on in my business, and them actually understand it. And so basically having that community has like really helped me personally, having women that I can kind of pull on, but knowing that there's value in being connected to what other like-minded women that are pursuing purpose, that are pursuing destiny, that are fulfilling what the call that God has on their lives. And they're also like entrepreneurs. Like that's a very unique space. And so it's so, so important to be connected with other people that are headed the same direction you're headed.
And the like-minded women that are currently in your power circle, are these women that you've grown with from friendship in different areas of life and it just kind of developed over into business? Are they fairly new relationships in your entrepreneurship role? And how did you kind of foster those relationships?
Absolutely. So I'm thinking about all of the women that I have. So one of them is like a best friend that I've had for years, and she's just supportive, but I don't necessarily call her to be like, I got this issue going on with my business, but she's sane enough for me to call her if I'm crying, and for her to be like, girl, get it together. Like, it's going to be okay. You know, letting, and that's been like a lifelong friend. I have another friend. She's kind of newer. We've known each other for about 3 years, but I just met her actually through my church, and we ended up doing an entrepreneurial pursuit together. And from there, we essentially like know that we're like-minded in that capacity. So I end up finding a lot of these women in like-minded spaces. So events that are catered towards women of color. You'll always see me at events like that because I love connecting with other women. And then some of the more business entrepreneurial focused relationships that I have some kind of at a distance, but the ones that I have as kind of accountability partners, one of them, we actually met on social media. So I always tell people, do not discount, the power of social media. You can connect with people and actually build genuine relationships. And so we connected on social media, and pretty much what we do is we're accountability partners. We tell each other our goals. We go back and forth each week saying, okay, here's my goals, here's what I accomplished, and you have someone holding you accountable. And then I have another accountability partner that I met by way of like a group me. And we just started being accountability partners, I would say about like a year and a half ago, fell off and then kind of got back on, but we kind of support what each other are doing. And we're, and it's just interesting that I found her in like attending events and then also seeing her in this group me. And I think we just reached out and was like, hey, like I see value in what you can add to my life. And I think I can add value to your life too. So it was like a candid conversation. But I think a lot of times people try to reach out and be like, oh, can I have coffee? Let's do lunch. But it's like, that's cool. But like, what value are you bringing? So I think that one of the best things that I've learned is that when I want to connect with someone, I figure out what I can add value to their lives before I ever ask them for anything.
Yeah, well, that's good because it sounds like, you need to, one, get in the room with them. You said you like to attend a lot of events that are focused on the type of women and like-minded people that you want to connect with, and, to find what it is, the value that you can bring, because, a lot of times, like you said, people might say like, can we meet for coffee and things like that. And if that's your first time kind of interacting with that person, it's kind of like, I don't know you. I don't want to, what I mean? Not to be me, but, people can be a little standoffish. So, to kind of build that relationship overall and figure out what the value is there. So I appreciate that feedback. Another question I wanted to get to you, since this is the Influence Her, the virtual experience event, I wanted to pose the question to you. What do you feel it means to be an influencer today? And how do you intend to continue to use your influence for, your tribe, your community?
Okay. So I think the term influencer is like one of those things where it's gotten super popular recently. And I don't necessarily think that influence, like, I think a lot of times when we think influencer, we think about like, an Instagram influencer,
social media.
exactly 100,000 followers, whatever else. But what I've learned is that your followers does not equal your level of impact and actual real life influence. Like, are you impacting people's lives? Are you changing people's lives? So when I think about somebody who is an influencer, I think about someone who has the ability to help people make more positive decisions with their lives, that helps them shift the way that they think about things, that help people basically that they're impacting people's lives in some capacity. And I think that in this day and age, like, it's more about your responsibility and what you do with your level of influence, whether that's the 300 people that follow you, or if that's, the girls at your church that you mentor. Like, so I think that that we should be more mindful about our level of impact and the number of people that are watching us, because when people are watching us and paying attention to us, we're influencing them in some capacity, and we should take responsibility for it. And so I think of an influencer as someone who takes their clout and uses it for a much better purpose to, push an agenda that is, of course, positive in some capacity. And not all influencers are positive, right? Like, we all know that. But I think for the scope of what we're talking about today, an influencer is someone who takes kind of that clout and like the sphere of influence that they do have, and, makes the most out of it. And what was the second part of the question?
How do you intend to use your influence or continue to use it?
That's like, okay. So that question is very kind of multifaceted, in the same way that I said, like, kind of like purpose is multifaceted. So one of the big ways is I have the book that I wrote, which is called The Morning After Prayer. And it's a 30-day devotional that helps women basically pursue sexual purity. And so that's one of the ways that I'm able to help share my story of how I went from, having sex to now making a conscious decision to be pure and celibate until marriage, and help shift kind of people's mindsets about sexuality. And so one of the big things with that is that people think that if you're celibate or you're not having sex or you're waiting to have sex until you're married, is that you don't want to have sex. Like, it's like that your body don't want it. And it's like, no, like, I like to shift mindsets. Just because I choose not to have sex doesn't mean that I don't want to do it. Right. Like, so it's like, what does life look like when you desire to have sex, but you're waiting for the right person to come along? So I'm using my influence to really kind of shift mindsets and help women heal from their past relationships, discover their self-identity, and then walk fully in the purpose that God has for them. So that's by way of by the devotional. And then I've also got, what else do I have? I mean, I talked a lot about the Go Getter Conference and really helping women kind of discover purpose and really learn tools to take their businesses to the next level, whether it's an idea or a blog or whatever else. And then I've also got this community called Epic Fabpreneur University. So that's a community of faith-based, career-minded women. And we basically come together and learn more online about how to take our businesses to the next level. And it's like a community of just like extremely supportive women. So I'm basically using my influence to help, shift people's mindsets, to help them grow in all that God has called them to be, and to also kind of just break free from fear and not like to get unstuck. A lot of people end up just feeling super stuck because they don't think they know what to do. But I've learned to kind of use my influence to impact other people and push people back to God at the end of the day, because without him, like, we're nothing. So
absolutely,
that's me.
Awesome. So what upcoming projects? I know you mentioned the devotional. Is there an upcoming Go Getter Conference that's coming up, or what's next?
Yeah, so Go Getter Conference is going on tour. So if you check out gogetterconference.com, you can check out the dates. We're heading to Atlanta in September. So that's September 30th, and that's a one-day experience. And it's going to be intimate, but it's going to be a really, really great time. We've got some amazing speakers lined up. And then I don't want to let out too much other stuff that I don't know, but we've got a lot of exciting stuff in the pipeline, a lot of cool partnerships, as well as just opportunities to connect with us in person in different cities. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm excited for you. September, Atlanta, hot Atlanta. I've never been to Atlanta.
I forgot to mention the freebie.
Yeah.
Yes. So what you said?
I said we love freebies.
Absolutely. So we've got our Boss Moves Challenge, which is basically helping women get unstuck and take their idea and turn it into an actual profitable business strategy in 5 days. So we really help you figure out the details of it. And so if you go to bit.ly.com/boss moves challenge. You'll be able to get access to that. And that's bit.ly/boss move challenge. And that's just an email challenge for 5 days that'll help you to start taking action in your business and kind of helping you go from idea to actual reality.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure we'll share that with everybody that's registered, the link. And also, how can they follow you?
Absolutely. You can follow me I'm Candace Janae on Instagram. It's CandaceJunee. It's not Junie. Everybody thinks it's Junie, like Tiana Taylor's daughter, but it's Candace Janae. And also follow us at Epic Fab Girl on Instagram. We're Epic Fab Girl and Candace Janae across the board, online, Instagram, Facebook, all of that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Candace. I am a fan. As I've shared with you, I'll share with the audience today. I'm a fan of your work. I definitely support everything that you do for supporting women, especially being a woman of God. And, you know, faith without works is dead. And I feel like in everything that you said today, that kind of sums it up in one way or the other, because you do have to have faith to be able to walk away from a secure job to step into what you know God has called you to do. So I definitely applaud you for that. And I thank you. I definitely thank you again and again. I like to blow kisses. So thank you, everybody, for joining the virtual Influencer, the virtual experience. I do appreciate it. We'll see you, or you'll hear from us tomorrow.